had been counting the coins in her palm for the third time that evening, hoping somehow the numbers would change. $3.47. That was all she had made today, sitting outside the downtown library with her sketchbook and a cardboard sign that read, "Portraits, pay what you can." It wasn't enough. Not even close. The shelter she sometimes stayed at charged $5 a night, and she needed to eat something. Her stomach had been growling since noon, reminding her that the half-eaten sandwich she'd found behind the cafe that morning was long gone. She looked down at her hands. They were dirty, with charcoal smudged under her fingernails from drawing all day. Her jeans had holes in both knees, not the fashionable kind, but the kind that came from wearing the same pair every single day for months. Her jacket, once a dark blue, had faded to an uncertain gray color that matched how she felt most days. Maya was 17 years old, but she felt much older. She'd been on the streets for 8 months now, ever since she aged out of her last foster home. The system had done what it could, she supposed. But when you turn 18 with no family and no money, the world becomes a very cold place very quickly. She gathered her few art supplies and tucked them carefully into her backpack. The pencils were worn down to stubs and her eraser was so small she could barely hold it. But they were precious to her. They were the only thing standing between her and complete despair. When she drew, she could forget for a little while that she had nowhere to go. No one waiting for her. No warm bed to sleep in. The November wind cut through her thin jacket as she stood up from her usual spot on the concrete. Her back ached from sitting all day and her feet were cold inside her worn-out sneakers. She'd stuffed newspaper inside them last week to cover the holes in the soles, but the paper had gotten wet and now just made her feet feel clammy. Maya started walking down the street, not really sure where she was headed. The library was closing and soon she'd need to find somewhere to spend the night. Maybe the overpass near the river, if the usual group there wasn't too crowded. Maybe the 24-hour laundromat where she could at least sit in the warmth for a few hours before the owner kicked her out. That's when she saw him. An older man in an expensive-looking dark coat was standing on the corner, struggling with what looked like a dozen shopping bags. He must have been in his 70s, with white hair and glasses that kept sliding down his nose as he tried to balance everything while looking up and down the street for a taxi. Maya slowed her pace, watching him. In her months on the street, she'd learned to read people. This man looked kind somehow. Maybe it was the way he kept apologizing to the bags every time one slipped from his grasp, or the gentle expression on his face despite his obvious frustration. She was about to walk past him when it happened. One of the bags finally broke free from his grip, then another, and suddenly packages were tumbling onto the wet sidewalk. The man made a sound of distress and bent down quickly, too quickly. He lost his balance and nearly fell, catching himself on a lamppost with one hand while bags continued to scatter around him. Maya didn't think. She just moved. Within seconds, she was kneeling on the cold, wet pavement, gathering up boxes and packages that had spilled everywhere. A scarf still with its price tag, books, what looked like art supplies, a framed photograph that had mercifully landed face up and unbroken. "Oh my, oh dear, thank you so much," the man was saying, his voice shaky as he steadied himself. "I don't know what I was thinking, trying to carry all this at once. My daughter tells me I'm too stubborn for my own good, and I suppose she's right." Maya carefully picked up each item, checking to make sure nothing was damaged. She was gentle with everything, even though her hands were grimy, and she worried about leaving marks on the nice wrapping paper. "Here, let me help you organize these better," she said quietly, starting to redistribute the items into the remaining intact bags. She moved efficiently, her artistic eye helping her figure out how to balance the weight and make everything fit. The man watched her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Most people on the street avoided looking at her at all. When they did look, it was usually with pity or disgust or that particular kind of studied indifference that said they were pretending she didn't exist. But this man was looking at her with something different. Curiosity, maybe, or interest. "You're very kind to help an old fool," he said warmly, "especially when I'm sure you have your own troubles to worry about." Maya glanced up at him briefly, then back down at the bags. So he'd noticed. Of course he had. She probably smelled like the street, and her clothes made it obvious she wasn't just some college student between classes. "It's okay," she said simply. "Everyone needs help sometimes." As she handed him the last bag, properly secured this time, she noticed him staring at something. She followed his gaze and realized her sketchbook had partially fallen out of her backpack when she'd knelt down. It had opened to a page showing a portrait she'd drawn last week of an elderly woman feeding pigeons in the park. "Did you draw that?" he asked, his voice suddenly very different, sharper, more focused. Maya hesitated, then nodded. She reached to close the sketchbook, suddenly embarrassed. Her drawings were personal, private. They were the only thing she had that felt truly hers. "Wait," he said gently. "May I please?" There was something in his tone that made her pause. It wasn't the voice of someone who wanted to mock her or judge her. It was the voice of someone who genuinely wanted to see. Slowly, carefully, she handed him the sketchbook. The man adjusted his glasses and began turning pages with careful, respectful movements. Maya watched his face change as he looked at her work. His eyes widened. His mouth opened slightly. He took his time with each portrait, each sketch of the people she saw every day on the streets. The young mother with her baby outside the grocery store, the veteran with the sad eyes who sat by the coffee shop, the teenager who played guitar for change near the bus station. "These are remarkable," he said finally, and his voice had gone soft with wonder. "Truly remarkable. You've captured something in these people, something real and important. The humanity, the dignity. How long have you been drawing?" "Since I was little," Maya answered. "My grandmother taught me. She said everyone has a story written on their face, and if you look close enough, you can read it." "Your grandmother was a wise woman," the man said. He closed the sketchbook carefully and handed it back to her. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a business card. "My name is Robert Harrison. I used to own an art gallery here in the city. I'm retired now, but I still know quality when I see it. And young lady, you have something special." Maya took the card with trembling fingers. Robert Harrison. The address listed was in the fancy part of downtown, where she never went because the police there moved homeless people along quickly. "I'd like to talk to you more about your art," Robert continued. "Would you be willing to meet me at this address tomorrow morning? Say 9 o'clock. I promise you this is legitimate. I'm a harmless old man who just wants to help a talented young artist. I'll have coffee and breakfast waiting." Maya stared at the card, then at him, then back at the card. Every instinct she'd developed on the street was screaming that this couldn't be real. People didn't just offer help like this. There had to be a catch, something he wanted from her. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw only kindness and what looked like genuine excitement. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you want to help me?" Robert smiled, and it was the saddest, most understanding smile she'd ever seen. "Because a long time ago, when I was young and struggling, someone helped me when they didn't have to. Someone who had even less than I did. And I never forgot that kindness. I've spent my whole life trying to pay it forward. Maybe you're giving me another chance to do that." A taxi finally pulled up to the curb. Robert carefully loaded his bags into the trunk with the driver's help, then turned back to Maya. "Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. Will you come?" Maya clutched the card in her hand and nodded slowly, not quite trusting her voice. Robert smiled again, got into the taxi, and was gone. She stood there on the sidewalk for a long time after he left, the business card growing damp in her palm from the light rain that had started to fall. Tomorrow morning seemed impossibly far away and impossibly soon all at once. For the first time in 8 months, Maya went to sleep that night under the overpass with something she hadn't felt in so long she'd almost forgotten what it was called. Hope. Maya barely slept that night. She kept touching the business card in her pocket, making sure it was real, that she hadn't imagined the whole thing. The cardboard was thick and expensive feeling, with raised letters she could trace with her fingertips in the darkness. Robert Harrison, art consultant, a phone number, an address. Around 4 in the morning, she gave up trying to sleep. The other people under the overpass were still quiet, wrapped in their sleeping bags and blankets. Maya gathered her things as silently as she could and started walking toward the 24-hour gas station 3 blocks away. The bathroom there was relatively clean, and the night clerk usually didn't bother her if she was quick. She locked herself in and looked at her reflection in the harsh fluorescent light. Her face looked back at her, pale and thin with dark circles under her eyes. Her hair was a mess, tangled and unwashed. If she was going to meet Robert Harrison at 9 o'clock, she couldn't look like this. Maya used the hand soap to wash her hair in the sink, working the cheap pink liquid through the tangles as best she could. The water was cold and she had to work quickly before anyone knocked on the door. She scrubbed her face and neck, behind her ears, anywhere that might be visible. Then she changed into her other shirt, the one she kept clean and folded at the bottom of her backpack for emergencies. It wasn't much, but it was something. When she looked in the mirror again, she looked a little more like a person and a little less like someone who lived on the streets. It would have to be good enough. She had 4 hours to kill before 9 o'clock. Maya walked through the empty early morning streets, watching the city wake up around her. Delivery trucks making their rounds, early shift workers heading to their jobs, joggers with their earbuds in running past without seeing her. By 8:30, she was standing across the street from the address on the card, too nervous to cross over. The building was beautiful, all glass and brick with window boxes full of flowers. Through the large windows, she could see paintings on the walls inside, lit by soft lighting. A sign above the door read, "Harrison Gallery," in elegant script. What was she thinking? She didn't belong in a place like this. Robert Harrison had probably forgotten all about her already. Or maybe he'd remembered and realized what a ridiculous idea it had been to invite a homeless girl to his fancy gallery. She should just leave now before she embarrassed herself. Maya was actually turning to walk away when the door opened and Robert stepped out. He was wearing a sweater vest and carrying 2 paper coffee cups. When he saw her across the street, his whole face lit up. "Maya, you came. I wasn't sure you would. Come on over, don't be shy." She crossed the street slowly, aware of every stain on her jeans, every worn spot on her jacket. But Robert just smiled and handed her one of the coffee cups. "I didn't know how you take it, so I brought cream and sugar packets. Come inside where it's warm. I've got pastries too. Do you like croissants?" The gallery was even more beautiful inside than it had looked from the street. Paintings covered the walls, some abstract splashes of color, others realistic portraits and landscapes. The floor was polished wood and there were comfortable-looking chairs scattered around. Everything smelled like coffee and something sweet she couldn't quite identify. Robert led her to a small table in the back corner where a bakery box sat waiting. When he opened it, Maya saw 6 different kinds of pastries, all of them looking fresh and perfect. "Please help yourself," Robert said, settling into a chair and wincing slightly. "My knees aren't what they used to be. Getting old is not for the faint of heart, let me tell you." Maya sat down carefully, perching on the edge of the chair like she might need to run at any moment. She picked up the smallest pastry, a little fruit Danish, and took a tiny bite. It was the most delicious thing she'd tasted in months. She had to concentrate on not wolfing it down in 3 bites. Robert sipped his coffee and watched her with kind eyes. "I'm glad you came. I meant what I said yesterday. Your drawings are special. I've been in the art world for over 50 years, and I know talent when I see it. The question is, what do you want to do with that talent?" Maya swallowed her bite of Danish. "I don't know. I just draw because I like it. Because it makes me feel like myself, I guess." "That's the best reason there is," Robert said. "Art for art's sake. But here's the thing. You could make a living doing this. Not right away, maybe, but eventually. With the right training, the right exposure, the right opportunities." He leaned forward, his expression serious but gentle. "I want to help you, Maya, but I need to understand your situation first. You don't have to tell me everything if you don't want to, but I need to know enough to figure out how best to help." So Maya told him. Not everything, but enough. The foster homes, aging out of the system, the 8 months on the street, the library steps and the sketchbook and the $3.47. She kept her voice steady and her eyes on her coffee cup, unable to look at him while she said it all out loud. When she finished, there was a long silence. Then Robert spoke and his voice was thick with emotion. "I'm going to introduce you to someone. My daughter, Jennifer. She runs a program for young people in situations like yours. It's called New Beginnings, and it helps kids who've aged out of foster care. They provide housing, job training, educational support, all the things you should have had access to from the start." Maya's head snapped up. "I don't want charity. I'm not looking for a handout." "It's not charity," Robert said firmly. "It's support. There's a difference. And besides, I'm going to ask something from you in return. I want you to work here at the gallery. Part-time, helping me organize things, maybe assisting with events. I'll pay you fairly for your time. And in exchange, I'll teach you about art history, techniques, the business side of things. I'll help you build a portfolio. Does that sound like charity to you?" It sounded like a dream. It sounded too good to be true. Maya felt tears starting to well up in her eyes, and she blinked them back furiously. She couldn't cry, not here. "Not now, why are you doing this?" she whispered. You don't even know me." Robert was quiet for a moment, looking past her at one of the paintings on the wall. When he spoke, his voice was soft and distant, like he was remembering something from long ago. "When I was 23 years old, I was a struggling artist in New York City. I was living in a terrible apartment with no heat, eating one meal a day if I was lucky. I was ready to give up and go back to my parents' house in Ohio, admit that I'd failed. Then one night I was walking home through a bad neighborhood and 3 men tried to rob me. Not that I had anything worth taking, but they didn't know that." He paused, took off his glasses and cleaned them with a handkerchief from his pocket. A homeless veteran stopped them. He put himself between me and those men, and he scared them off somehow. I don't know how he did it. When it was over, I tried to give him the few dollars I had, but he wouldn't take it. He said, "Just promise me you'll keep making your art, kid. The world needs more beauty in it." Robert put his glasses back on and looked at Maya directly. "That man saved my life, and he asked for nothing. I never even learned his name. But I never forgot him. I kept making art. I opened this gallery. I had a good life, a successful career, and I always wondered how I could ever repay that kindness. Yesterday, when you helped me on the street, when you took the time to gather up my things even though you clearly had your own troubles, I saw that same kind of goodness, and when I saw your art, I realized this might be my chance. Not to repay that veteran, I can't do that, but to pass it forward. To help someone who has that same spark, that same determination to create beauty even when the world is hard." Maya couldn't stop the tears now. They rolled down her cheeks and she didn't bother wiping them away. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll let me help," Robert said simply. "Say you'll meet Jennifer and give this program a chance. Say you'll work with me and learn everything I can teach you. That's all I'm asking." The gallery door opened and a woman in her 40s walked in. She had Robert's same kind eyes and a warm smile. "Dad, is this Maya?" "Jennifer, perfect timing." Robert stood up, wincing again at his knees. "Maya, this is my daughter." "Jennifer, this is the young artist I told you about." Jennifer came over and shook Maya's hand like she was meeting a business colleague, not a homeless teenager. "It's so nice to meet you. My dad called me last night and couldn't stop talking about your drawings. He said you have a real gift." "I have pictures," Robert said, pulling out his phone. "I took some photos of her sketchbook last night." "Look at this one, Jennifer. Look at the emotion in the face." Maya watched in amazement as Robert showed his daughter the photos he'd taken without her even noticing. Jennifer studied them seriously, zooming in on details, making appreciative sounds. "These are really good, Maya," Jennifer said finally. "Have you ever had any formal training?" "No. Just what my grandmother taught me before she died." "Well, your grandmother must have been an excellent teacher." Jennifer sat down at the table and pulled out a folder from her bag. "My dad told me a little about your situation. I want to tell you about our program and see if it might be a good fit for you." For the next hour, Jennifer explained everything. The program had small apartments where participants could live while they got back on their feet. There were counselors, job training programs, help with getting IDs and important documents, assistance with education. The only requirements were that participants had to be working towards some goal, whether that was school or job training or something else. And they had to contribute what they could to the community, whether that was money once they were working or volunteer hours if they weren't. "We have a spot available right now," Jennifer said. "You could move in today if you wanted. It's a studio apartment, small but clean, furnished. Your own bathroom and a little kitchenette. The first 3 months are free while you get settled. Then it's 30% of whatever income you're making after that. Does that sound like something you'd be interested in?" Maya couldn't speak. She just nodded, tears streaming down her face again. Her own apartment. Her own bathroom. A place to sleep that wasn't the street or a crowded shelter. "Wonderful," Jennifer said, pulling out more papers. "Let's get started on the paperwork. And Maya, welcome to New Beginnings. I have a feeling you're going to do amazing things." Robert reached across the table and patted Maya's hand. "I'll see you Monday morning, 9 o'clock sharp. We have a lot of work to do." As Maya signed the papers that would change her life, she kept thinking about what Robert had said, about the homeless veteran who helped him so long ago, about passing forward kindness, about creating beauty in a hard world. She thought about the moment yesterday when she'd made the split-second decision to help an old man with his shopping bags instead of walking past. Such a small thing, such a simple act of basic human decency, but that one small choice had led to this. to Robert and Jennifer in new beginnings and a studio apartment and a job at an art gallery. Maybe, Maya thought, that's how miracles work. Not through grand gestures or divine intervention, but through small moments of kindness that ripple out in ways you can never predict. One person helps another, who helps another, who helps another, creating an endless chain of goodness stretching across decades and cities and lives. She picked up her coffee cup, now cool but still sweet, and smiled through her tears. Tomorrow, she would wake up in her own apartment. She would have an address again, a door with a lock, a place to call home. But today, right now, sitting in this beautiful gallery with these kind people who barely knew her but wanted to help anyway, Maya felt something she hadn't felt in so long. She felt like she mattered, like her life had value, like she was seen, and for a girl who'd been invisible for so long, that was everything. The studio apartment was on the third floor of a building in a quiet neighborhood Maya had never been to before. Jennifer drove her there that same afternoon, stopping first at a Target where she bought Maya some basic necessities. Toiletries, towels, sheets, some groceries for the little kitchenette. You don't have to do this, Maya kept saying as Jennifer added things to the cart. A lamp, some hangers, a set of dishes. I want to, Jennifer said simply. Besides, the program has a small fund for exactly this kind of thing. Getting people started with the basics they need. You're not taking anything away from anyone else, I promise. When they pulled up to the building, Maya just stared out the window. It was nothing fancy, just a regular brick apartment building with a neat little yard in front. But to her, it looked like a palace. The apartment itself was small, maybe 300 square feet total, but it had a real bed with a frame and a mattress. A tiny kitchen area with a 2-burner stove, a small fridge, and a microwave. A bathroom with a shower that had actual water pressure and got hot. A window that looked out over the street with blinds that worked. The internet password is on the fridge, Jennifer said, pointing to a sticky note. There's a laundry room in the basement, free to use. Trash goes in the dumpster behind the building. Your key works for both the main door downstairs and your apartment. Questions so far? Maya shook her head. She was afraid if she tried to speak, she'd start crying again, and she'd already cried so much today. Jennifer showed her how to work the shower, where the spare light bulbs were kept, how to adjust the radiator for heat. Then she handed Maya a folder full of papers. This has all the program information. There's a schedule of support groups and skill workshops. You don't have to go to all of them, but I'd encourage you to try a few and see what fits. There's also a list of counselors if you want to talk to someone. And my number is right there on top. You can call or text me anytime, okay? Day or night. I mean that. After Jennifer left, Maya stood in the middle of her apartment for a long time just looking around. Her apartment. Her own space. She walked to the window and looked out at the street below. People walking dogs. Kids riding bikes. Normal life happening all around her. She went to the bathroom and turned on the shower just to watch the steam rise. She opened the fridge and looked at the groceries Jennifer had helped her buy. Milk, eggs, bread, peanut butter, apples. Simple things. Beautiful things. That night, Maya took the longest shower of her life. She washed her hair 3 times, using the cheap shampoo from Target like it was liquid gold. She stood under the hot water until it started to run lukewarm, watching 8 months of street grime swirl down the drain. When she finally got out, she wrapped herself in a towel that was clean and soft and smelled like fresh cotton. She put on the new pajamas Jennifer had insisted on buying, simple gray sweatpants and a t-shirt. Then she climbed into bed, into sheets that were crisp and clean, and pulled the blanket up to her chin. The bed was so soft. The pillow was so comfortable. The apartment was warm and quiet and safe. And for the first time in 8 months, Maya slept through the entire night without waking up once. She started work at the gallery the following Monday. Robert was there waiting for her with coffee and a warm smile just like he'd promised. He showed her around properly this time, explaining how the gallery was organized, where everything was kept, how the security system worked. Your main job is going to be helping me catalog the collection, he explained, leading her to a back room filled with paintings in various stages of being sorted. I've been putting this off for years, but it needs to be done. Each piece needs to be photographed, measured, documented. Artist name, title, year if we know it, condition notes. Think you can handle that? Maya nodded, looking around at all the art. I can do that. Good. And while we work, I'll teach you about techniques, art history, how to look at a painting and really see what the artist was trying to say. Sound fair? It sounded like the best job in the world. They fell into a rhythm over the following weeks. Maya would arrive at the gallery 3 mornings a week and work for 4 hours. Robert taught her how to handle art properly, how to document pieces, how to research artists and movements. But more than that, he taught her how to see. This brushwork here, he'd say, pointing to a landscape painting. See how the artist used quick, loose strokes? That's Impressionism. They weren't trying to capture every detail. They were trying to capture the feeling of a moment. The light, the atmosphere. Close your eyes and imagine standing in that field. Can you feel the sun? Hear the wind? Maya would close her eyes and try to feel it. And slowly she started to understand that art wasn't just about making things look realistic. It was about communication. About taking what was inside you and putting it on the canvas so others could feel it too. On her days off from the gallery, Maya explored her new neighborhood. She found a library 2 blocks away and got her first library card in years. She discovered a small park where she could sit and sketch. She learned which coffee shop had the best prices and which grocery store had sales on Wednesdays. She also started going to some of the support group meetings Jennifer had mentioned. At first, she just sat in the back and listened. Other young people who'd aged out of foster care, who'd been homeless, who were trying to rebuild their lives. Their stories were like hers in so many ways. The fear, the loneliness, the constant uncertainty. But slowly, Maya started to participate. She shared her story. She listened to advice from people who were a few steps ahead of her in the process. She made friends with a girl named Tracy who was studying to be a nurse, and a guy named Devin who was learning to code. "You're doing so well," Jennifer told her during one of their check-in meetings. "I can see the change in you already. You're walking taller, smiling more. How does it feel?" "Like I can breathe again," Maya said honestly. "Like I was underwater for so long and I didn't even realize it until I came up for air." 3 months into the program, Robert approached her with a proposition. "I've been thinking," he said, adjusting his glasses in that way he did when he was excited about something. "I want you to create a series, a collection of portraits, maybe 10 or 12 pieces, people you knew from the streets, the ones in your sketchbook but done larger, more finished. Really take your time with them. Make them something special." "But I don't have the supplies for something like that," Maya said. "Good canvas and paints, they're expensive." Robert smiled. "The gallery will provide materials. Consider it an investment. Because here's the thing, Maya. I want to display these pieces in a show, a real exhibition here at the gallery. We'll call it something meaningful. We'll invite the press, collectors, everyone. It'll be your debut as a serious artist." Maya felt dizzy. "A show, my own show? Why not? You have the talent. You have something important to say. The world needs to see these faces you draw, these people society tries to ignore. Art is supposed to make us feel something, make us think. Your work does that." So Maya began working on the series. She'd spend her mornings at the gallery doing her regular work. Then Robert would set her up at an easel in the corner where the light was best. He'd bring her coffee and leave her to work, only coming over when she asked for advice. She started with the elderly woman feeding pigeons, the one from that page Robert had first seen in her sketchbook. She worked slowly, carefully, trying to capture not just what the woman looked like but who she was, the gentle way she scattered breadcrumbs, the patient smile on her weathered face, the story written in every line and wrinkle. As she painted, Maya thought about all the hours she'd spent on the street, watching people, really seeing them when the rest of the world looked away. She'd memorized their faces, their expressions, their small moments of dignity and grace. Now she could give those moments back to them, preserve them in paint and canvas. The young mother with her baby became the second portrait. Then the veteran with sad eyes. The teenager with his guitar. The old man who collected bottles and cans but always had a joke to share. One by one, Maya brought them to life on canvas. Sometimes she'd get frustrated and want to give up. The colors wouldn't mix right, or the proportions would be off, or she couldn't quite capture the expression she remembered. But Robert would come over and gently guide her, showing her techniques, encouraging her to trust her instincts. "Art is not about perfection," he'd remind her. "It's about truth, and you know these people's truth better than anyone. Just let it flow through you onto the canvas." 4 months after moving into her apartment, Maya completed her first online high school course. She'd been working on her GED at night, taking classes on the computer Jennifer had helped her get. When she saw the passing grade pop up on her screen, She actually jumped up and down in her tiny apartment, laughing and crying at the same time. She called Jennifer immediately. "I did it!" "I passed my first class." "Maya, that's wonderful." "I'm so proud of you. One step at a time, right? You're building your future." That's exactly what it felt like she was building something brick by brick. The apartment, the job, the education, the art, each piece fitting together to create a life that felt real and solid and hers. Tracy invited her to a birthday party at a bowling alley, and Maya went even though she was nervous about being around so many people. She laughed until her stomach hurt when Devin threw a gutter ball and made a dramatic show of falling to his knees in despair. She ate pizza and drank soda and felt like a normal teenager for the first time in her life. "You know what's weird?" Tracy said as they sat lacing up their bowling shoes. 6 months ago I was sleeping in my car, and now I'm here, at a bowling alley, worried about whether I'm going to make a fool of myself. Normal problems. It's amazing what normal problems feel like when you haven't had them in a while. Maya understood exactly what she meant. Normal problems were a luxury. Worrying about a math test or whether your shoes matched your outfit or if you said something awkward at a party. These were the concerns of people who had a foundation under them, who weren't just trying to survive day to day, and now Maya had that foundation. It was still new, still fragile in some ways, but it was there. By month 6, she'd completed 8 portraits for her series. Robert would bring visitors to the gallery over to see them, and Maya would stand awkwardly to the side while he explained her work. People would study the paintings with serious expressions, asking questions, making comments. Some even asked about buying them. "Not yet," Robert would say firmly. "These pieces are going to be part of an exhibition first. After that, we'll see." Maya was terrified about the exhibition. The thought of all those people looking at her work, judging it, having opinions about it, made her stomach twist with anxiety. But every time she looked at the portraits she'd created, she felt a sense of rightness about it. These people deserve to be seen. Their stories deserve to be told. She added 4 more pieces to the series. The woman who sang opera on the corner, her voice still pure despite her circumstances. The couple who'd been married for 40 years and lost their home, but still held hands when they thought no one was watching. The boy who couldn't have been more than 15, trying so hard to look tough but whose eyes betrayed his fear. When she finished the 12th and final portrait, Robert stood back and looked at the complete series with tears in his eyes. "This is extraordinary work, Maya, truly extraordinary. You haven't just painted these people. You've honored them. You've given them dignity and presence and voice. This is what art is supposed to do." The opening date for the exhibition was set for a Friday evening in late spring, almost exactly 1 year after Maya had helped Robert with his shopping bags on that cold November night. As the date approached, Maya swung between excitement and pure terror. The week before the exhibition, Maya could barely eat. She'd wake up in the middle of the night with her heart racing, wondering what she'd been thinking. Who was she to have her own art show? She was just a kid who'd been homeless a few months ago. What if people laughed at her work? What if no one came? What if everyone came and thought it was terrible? Robert seemed to sense her anxiety. He'd started stopping by the gallery early, before anyone else arrived, just to sit with her while she worked on final touches to the paintings. "I was terrified before my first show too," he told her one morning, handing her the coffee he'd brought. "I threw up in the bathroom 20 minutes before the doors opened." True story. "That's not making me feel better," Maya said, but she smiled a little. "The thing is, the fear never completely goes away. Every time you put your art out there, you're making yourself vulnerable. You're saying, here's a piece of my soul, here's what matters to me, here's how I see the world. And then you're letting people judge it. That takes courage. I don't feel courageous. I feel like I'm going to pass out." Robert laughed gently. "Courage isn't the absence of fear, Maya. It's doing the thing anyway, even though you're scared. And you're doing it. That's what matters." Jennifer had helped Maya find a dress for the opening. Nothing too fancy, but something that made her feel grown up and professional. Dark blue with a simple cut, paired with shoes that didn't have holes in them. When Maya looked at herself in the mirror the day before the show, she barely recognized the person staring back. Her hair had grown out and was healthy now, shining in the light. Her face had filled out from regular meals. Her skin had cleared up. But more than the physical changes, there was something different in her eyes. A confidence that hadn't been there before. a sense of purpose. "You look beautiful," Jennifer said, standing behind her. "But more than that, you look happy. Like you found yourself." "I think maybe I have," Maya said softly. The day of the exhibition arrived with perfect spring weather, warm but not too hot, with a gentle breeze that made the flowers in the gallery's window boxes dance. Robert had hired a catering company to provide food and drinks. He'd invited art critics from local papers, collectors he knew, other artists, community leaders. He'd even contacted some organizations that worked with homeless populations, hoping to bridge the gap between the art world and the people in Maya's paintings. Maya arrived at the gallery 3 hours early. She couldn't help herself. She needed to see the space one more time before people started showing up. The 12 portraits were hung on the main wall, arranged in a way that created a visual conversation between the pieces. Each one had a small placard next to it with a title and brief description. In the center of the room, slightly larger than the others, hung the portrait that had become Maya's favorite. It was of the elderly woman feeding pigeons, the first one she'd painted. The title card read, "Invisible No More, Margaret." Because Maya had gone back weeks later and found the woman in the park. They'd talked and Maya had learned her name, her story. Margaret had been a teacher before she lost everything. She'd raised 3 children. She loved classical music and mystery novels. She had a granddaughter she hadn't seen in 5 years. All of that was in the painting somehow. In the set of Margaret's shoulders, the gentle intelligence in her eyes, the dignity in her posture. Maya had managed to capture not just what Margaret looked like, but who she was. "Ready?" Robert asked, coming up beside her. He was wearing his best suit, looking distinguished and proud. "No, but I'm here anyway." He squeezed her shoulder. "That's my girl. Now I need to tell you something before people start arriving. There's been interest. Serious interest. 3 of the paintings already have buyers lined up, pending your approval, of course. The money would go to you, and it's enough to help you get even more settled. Maybe buy a car or save for college." Maya's eyes widened. "People want to buy them?" "Of course they do. They're beautiful, meaningful work. But here's the thing I want you to think about. Some buyers want to purchase the pieces for themselves, for their private collections. But one of the organizations I contacted wants to buy several of them to display in their lobby, a place where people in crisis come for help. They think having these portraits there would remind their clients that they're seen, that they matter." Maya thought about that, about the people she'd painted, about how she'd felt on the streets, invisible and forgotten, about what it might mean to someone walking into a crisis center, scared and desperate to see those faces looking back at them, to see dignity reflected in people who looked like them. "I like that idea," she said slowly. "I like it a lot. I thought you might. We can talk details later. For now, let's focus on getting through tonight." People started arriving at 6. At first just a trickle, then more and more until the gallery was full of people holding wine glasses and small plates of appetizers, moving from painting to painting, talking in low voices. Maya stood in the corner, trying to be invisible again out of old habit, but Robert kept gently pulling her forward, introducing her to people. "This is the artist, Maya Chen. Maya, this is Diane from the Tribune. She's writing a feature about the show." "This is incredible work," Diane said, shaking Maya's hand. "So raw and honest. Can you tell me about your process? How did you decide which subjects to paint?" Maya stumbled through an answer, her mouth dry despite the water glass in her hand. But Diane nodded encouragingly, taking notes, asking more questions. Before Maya knew it, she was actually talking, really explaining. About the months on the street. About seeing people that others looked past. About wanting to give them dignity and presence. More people came up to her. A collector who wanted to know if she was working on any other series. An art teacher who asked if she'd consider speaking to her students. A woman who stood in front of the veteran portrait for 10 minutes crying, then found Maya to tell her that it looked just like her brother, who she'd lost to homelessness 5 years ago. Tracy and Devin showed up with a group of friends from the program. They moved through the gallery like they owned the place, pointing at paintings and announcing loudly, "Our friend made these. She's amazing." Maya felt embarrassed but also warmed by their support. Jennifer arrived with her husband and teenage kids. "Maya, this is spectacular. I am so proud of you. Look at how far you've come." Maya looked around the gallery at all these people, all this attention on her work, On these faces she'd cared about enough to paint. A year ago, she'd been sleeping under an overpass, counting coins, wondering if she'd ever have a real life again. And now this, all because she'd stopped to help someone with their shopping bags. Around 8 o'clock, Robert clinked a glass to get everyone's attention. The room quieted, and people turned to look at him standing in the center of the gallery. Thank you all for coming tonight. I've been in the art world for over 50 years, and I can honestly say this is one of the most meaningful exhibitions I've ever had the privilege of hosting. These paintings aren't just technically excellent, though they are that. They're important. They're necessary. They remind us to see the humanity in everyone, even those we might usually overlook. He gestured to Maya to come stand beside him. She did, her legs shaky, her heart pounding. Maya is not just talented. She's brave. She's compassionate. She's everything an artist should be, and I'm honored to be her mentor and friend. Let's give her a round of applause. The room erupted in clapping. People were smiling at her, raising their glasses. Maya felt tears threatening and blinked them back. She wasn't going to cry, not here, not now. But then Robert leaned over and whispered, I have one more surprise for you. Look by the door. Maya looked. Standing just inside the entrance, looking uncertain but smiling, was Margaret. The woman from the park, the subject of the central portrait. She was wearing a clean dress, her white hair neatly combed, looking nervous but proud. Maya's composure shattered. She started crying right there in front of everyone, happy tears streaming down her face. She made her way through the crowd to Margaret, and the older woman pulled her into a fierce hug. I saw the flyer, Margaret said into Maya's ear. Someone at the shelter showed me. I couldn't believe it was me. I look so beautiful. You made me look beautiful. You are beautiful, Maya said, pulling back to look at her. I just painted what I saw. She spent the next 20 minutes with Margaret, introducing her to people, watching her stand in front of her own portrait with wonder on her face. Robert quietly came up and pressed something into Margaret's hand. And Maya saw it was cash, probably more than Margaret had seen in months. For being such an excellent subject, Robert said kindly, and for being willing to come tonight and let people meet the real you. By the time the exhibition ended at 10, Maya was exhausted but exhilarated. The gallery had sold 5 paintings. The Crisis Center had agreed to purchase 3 of them at a price that made Maya's eyes water. Several news outlets wanted to do follow-up stories, and most importantly, people had seen her work and felt something. After everyone left and they were cleaning up, Robert pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and handed it to Maya. What's this? She asked. Open it. Inside was a letter from the Art Institute downtown. A full scholarship. 4 years of tuition, room, board, everything. Maya read it 3 times before she understood what she was seeing. When did you? I submitted your portfolio a few months ago, Robert admitted. I hope you're not mad. But I knew they'd see what I see in you. Talent, heart, vision. You're going to college, Maya. You're going to become the artist you were always meant to be. Maya couldn't speak. She just hugged him. This kind old man who'd seen potential in a homeless girl on the street, who'd given her a chance when no one else would, who'd taught her and supported her and believed in her even when she didn't believe in herself. Thank you, she finally managed to whisper. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for being worth seeing, he replied gently. Now go home and rest. You've earned it, and Maya, this is just the beginning. You have so much ahead of you. So many more paintings to create, so many more stories to tell. I can't wait to see where you go from here. That night, lying in bed in her little apartment looking at the scholarship letter on her nightstand, Maya thought about the chain of events that had led here. A man with too many shopping bags. A girl who stopped to help. A sketchbook at just the right moment. Kindness offered and received. Talent recognized. Opportunity given. It had all started with such a small thing, such a simple choice. But that's how miracles work, Maya thought. Not through grand gestures, but through small moments where people choose to be kind, choose to help, choose to see each other's humanity. She'd spent so long being invisible, being overlooked, being nothing to anyone, and now she was an artist with her own exhibition, a student with a scholarship, a person with a future. But more than any of that, she was seen. She mattered. And she'd learned that everyone has the power to change someone's life. Sometimes all it takes is stopping for a moment to help someone with their shopping bags. Sometimes miracles start that small. Maya fell asleep with a smile on her face, dreaming of all the paintings she would create. all the stories she would tell, all the ways she would pass forward the kindness that had saved her life. The summer before Maya started at the Art Institute was the busiest and happiest of her life. The exhibition had created more buzz than anyone expected. Local news channels did stories about the homeless girl turned artist. A feature in the city magazine called her work a powerful reminder of our shared humanity. Suddenly, Maya Chen was a name people in the local art community knew, but what meant more to her than any of the attention were the letters. They started arriving at the gallery a few weeks after the show closed. People wrote to tell her that her paintings had moved them, changed how they saw the homeless people in their own neighborhoods. A woman wrote that she'd stopped to talk to a man on her corner for the first time in 5 years of walking past him, and learned his name was Charles and he'd been a chef before he got sick. A teenager wrote that Maya's story inspired her to volunteer at a shelter. Maya kept every letter in a box in her apartment. She'd read them sometimes when she felt overwhelmed or doubted herself. These letters were proof that art could actually do something, could actually change how people thought and felt and acted in the world. The crisis center that had bought 3 of her paintings invited her to their opening ceremony when they hung them in their lobby. Maya stood there watching as people in crisis, people who looked like she had looked a year ago, stopped to look at the faces on the wall. Some of them cried. Some of them stood up straighter. Some of them smiled for the first time in what looked like a long time. "You've given them dignity," the center director told Maya. "You've shown them that they're not invisible. That's a powerful gift." Maya started working on a new series over the summer. This time the subjects were people from the New Beginnings program. Tracy studying at her nursing textbooks, exhaustion and determination on her face. Devin at his computer, lines of code reflected in his glasses. A young mother named Isabella holding her toddler, both of them finally safe after escaping an abusive situation. People rebuilding their lives one small victory at a time.